Fixing a game is a hard thing to do. Who would have thought? It's like playing with fire. You have to find a way to make as many people happy as possible, and for better or for worse, most of the people willing to spend money have to be in that category. That's how the company thrives and makes profit. And whether we want to admit it or not, the fate of the game and our enjoyment of it lies in their hands. I would like to first mention that sometimes when people come up with ideas of new systems or modifications to pre-existing ones, it might create a loop of problems from just one fix. But the difference comes in whether or not you choose to still act and solve the upcoming issues, or you don't make any changes at all in fear of them. And without further ado, let's uncover how would I fix Genshin Impact. Now, as much as I hate gambling and my luck is terrible no matter what game I go in, I can't fix a game by changing its identity, so Genshin Impact will have to remain a gacha game. While my personal take is that gambling is predatory and can make one's life more miserable than enjoyable, I do have to play the devil's advocate and say that gambling is sometimes fun. But what's more fun than gambling? Gambling that includes a safety net, or what you would call a pity system. It's the idea that no matter how unlucky you get, ultimately you will get what you aimed for. And that idea is what attracted me to Genshin Impact to begin with. However, Genshin Impact has what you would call PT system with extra steps. Before I give you an example, let's just state two important facts. 1. Gambling at a low rate of success with PT is way more fun than normal gambling at a low rate of success. 2. I would like to think that everyone who gambles at a low rate of success with PT would like to actually get what they are originally gambling for. Genshin Impact has a PT system. Well, the realistic way of looking at it is that Genshin has a PT system that is split into two. So, for example, in this case I'm wishing for Nilo. Now, the original PT system was what allowed me to get a 5-star, but the developers from Genshin Impact decided that we should also have a 50% chance to not get the character that we are gambling for to begin with. And if we don't get the character that we want, the next time we get a 5-star, it will definitely be dumb. Normal gambling is not fun at all, but gambling with a PT system is pretty fun in my opinion. Now, gambling with a PT system only to acquire something that you didn't even want to gamble for is so ridiculous that I can't even put it into words. It just seems ridiculous. There's no way you can argue that this isn't predatory monetization anymore. There's always this argument made in the community that Genshin Impact is better than other gachas. I personally couldn't care less whether a broken car has 2 extra pieces working properly compared to another broken car. At the end of the day, it still is a broken car and nothing will change that. But I want to fix that. It's actually pretty simple. Hear me out. Just get rid of the 50% chance of receiving another character. Pretty simple fix, right? But why wouldn't they do that?
Isn't it because they are greedy?
Well, actually, it's because that will cut their income in half. Let's not argue about whether or not they make enough money and can lose some. As I mentioned, sometimes we get a few problems by solving something else. So let's say we gave players a realistic expectation of how much they need to spend to get one character. That should make them happy. Well, that would surely make me happy. Now I know how much I need to save. But Genshin Impact will arguably lose 50% of their income by doing so. And that's pretty ironic if you're asking me. But this comes with one issue that we have to fix. What about the lack of normal 5-stars? People will not get those characters unless they purposely wish on the normal banner. Well, the fix for that is already in the game under a different form. And it's the weapon PT system. You can keep the system as is and promote 2 5-stars every 2 weeks and borrow the 2 times PT system that the weapon banner has. Or you could straight up forget about the featured 5-stars and make all 5-stars on the original banner selectable from the PT menu selector. So let's help them regain some of that money back. First of all, we've seen that they are capable of making skins for characters. So let's pump those skins up. Whether or not you want to change their core design completely and have characters with clothes from a different region, or you want to keep it appropriate to the continent they are from, that is on you alone. I personally don't think weapon skins should be implemented, but what about gliders, effects and pets? Sure, this won't make up for the amount of income that they have lost, and I arguably gave them more work, but whether or not that's worth in return for a bigger customer satisfaction is left up for debate. I have a few other methods for them to increase their income, but I'll come back to that later. Alright, 50-50 mechanic is out the window, but the world is not at peace yet. This is a minor change and we have to spice things up. Genshin Impact has a very satisfying combat system, and we can be thankful to the elemental interactions that we have. We know that Danger already came out, but what if we add another slot to our party so we can fit one more character? I'm sure this idea just exploded in your brain right now, but hear me out. With a new element into play, a lot can change about the way we approach combat and how we counter enemies. More elemental reactions open the door for different enemies with different mechanics that can be countered by a specific element interaction combo. If you ask me, it could get pretty exciting. On a side note, it was always easy for me to press my keyboard buttons all the way to 5. More than that and it could slow me down for a few milliseconds. And since we're just at the topic of money a few seconds ago, Genshin Impact could arguably be making more money from this as well. One more slot in our party spikes up the need for fully built characters into the Abyss by 2, which requires more time investment and arguably gives them more money. So then, what's stopping us from giving every single character a third skill? Now, we are really spicing things up. We know that every character has 2 skills, and in my personal experience, the reason why I'm not using some of my C6 4 stars is because I don't like one of their skills or some of their constellations feel outright weak and boring. But what if we added a third skill? Well, if you put a little bit of thought behind this idea, you could easily make the assumption that this will spice up which characters are good and which are not. You could massively buff the 5 stars or the 4 stars that feel weak. Would that make the already strong characters even stronger? Not necessarily, depends on what skills you come up with. What about the way you implement it? Well, we could go about this in a few ways. First, by using the story. Something happens in the world as we know it that makes fissure bearers awaken at random. Or, they could have a massive training arc, but I like the first option way more. Second, we could sprinkle some gacha into this idea. Instead of the overbearing 3-star weapons, we could sprinkle some of the new skills for characters that you have. This actually works very well if you are thinking of a way to solve the constellations of these new skills. It could be done the same way and this might actually make them more money again. Third, we could actually increase the level of our characters past 90 in order to gain a new skill. This will have massive effects on the PvE aspect of the game as we know it, like increasing world levels and making enemies tougher, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But what about the downsides of these two ideas? Well, the first one would be device compatibility. We will have to do some work on the layout for other devices since we're going to add a new skill and a new party slot, but it's not impossible. And while this idea is good, they could very heavily monetize it in a way that will not benefit the free-to-play player at all, in order to make up for the loss of the 50-50 mechanic. At the same time, having to build more characters would cause a lot of burnout for a few people, just like myself, because of the way we build them right now. But if we can solve the first issue, hope the second one won't be a problem, this could massively increase the player count and income that Genshin Impact will make. Think of all the 5 stars that you previously liked the design of, but felt like they were weak. I could surely think of one. As for the third issue, this will require a lot of fixing. Building characters in Genshin takes a lot of time. It takes even more for players who want them perfect like myself. But why does it take such a long time to build characters? Well, it all goes back to the resin system. We need too many resources from too many different activities that require resin. But one good thing is that most of these activities have an end. Let's say you want to level up a character. A few boss runs coupled with some exploring and being active in events could probably get you to max level pretty quickly. Leveling up a weapon is the same thing. There is some time getting required when it comes to the weapon level up materials, but even if it took you 1 week or more to prepare for a character in order to get his weapon leveled up and talent fully leveled up, I'm sure most players would be fine with that. The problem with a big roster of built characters comes in the most commonly hated system by the community: artifact farming. I have explained in my last video why artifact farming is a pain, but we must first understand that having a system like artifact farming to log in daily and get rid of all of our resin is a good tactic to keep player retention. And that's even the problem with it. Every game developer wants player retention, but there is a fine line between daily player retention and player frustration. I will tackle this topic in a greater detail in another video, but in Genshin Impact we unfortunately get into the player frustration territory. If you want to fix Genshin Impact for the better, artifact farming has to change. There is nothing worse than logging in every day to upgrade a new unit that just came out, only to be hit by the reality of artifact RNG sinking in. This is the main deterrent of many players when building new characters, which means fixing it makes them more money. Let's start with the small changes for now. We know there are always 2 artifact sets in a domain. Let's let the player choose which one they want to be farming for, or maybe choose which piece to specifically farm from. Better yet, combine both ideas into one. What about the strongbox system? With the addition of the Sumeru region, the strongbox system received an update that consisted on the amount of artifact sets you can now exchange for. I personally do not see a reason why all artifacts are not available there. I get that older artifacts weren't worth farming for, since most of the domains had only one good artifact set, but this would give the player extra RNG rolls onto their preferred artifact set, and we all love a little bit of gambling that doesn't harm anyone. But as harmless as this idea might sound, it will still probably frustrate a few players, since at the end of the day, you have to deal with RNG rolls on those artifacts. Not only is the main stat RNG for 3 out of 5 of those artifact pieces, but the substats and their rolls and rolls amount are also RNG. Now, let's get on to the solution that they will least likely pick, but the arguably best solution for artifact farming. This solution consists of picking what main stat and for what piece you want dropped. In terms of goblets, it would be an electro goblet no matter what set you get it from. That would at least sort out the RNG on one side.
But Mysteries, why not select the substats as well?
Well, that would completely negate the RNG part of the system. And to be honest with you, most people would be done building a best in slot artifact set for every single character they have. And we want to keep our players engaged as well, since if you don't have to use resin for artifact farming anymore, then resin doesn't have a lot of usage outside of building your characters, which is limited, or working towards new ones. You will be able to make new characters way faster than they can release them, and that hurts the game. However, in our current system, unless you're RNG carried or don't have a big enough of an ego to care about artifact sets, you will have a ton of characters that are so close yet so far from your expectations 3 months after they are released. In my opinion, the best fix that balances player experience and player retention for a gacha game like Genshin Impact is actually letting players reroll substats when an artifact is level 0 by using their own resin. I think somewhere around 2 to 5 resin should be enough for one reroll attempt of your substats. This way, we keep player retention for a long time while also keep player satisfaction in mind. I feel like we made some pretty big changes in terms of acquiring these characters, building them, and changing how they play. But at the same time, is there a challenge for these characters? Well, at the moment, not at all. In fact, the good part about Genshin is how easy it is to get into, build a few characters, and most likely clear the highest possible content with the characters that you acquire for free. In that sense, you can reach endgame pretty easy, as long as you understand how the elemental reactions work and how to pair characters properly. In that sense, Genshin Impact is super friendly and I don't want to take that away from the game. But the problem is that most players that have been playing the game for quite a while and love it for its creative and polished combat stopped having fun because the content is way too easy. And for any game developer, if your players stop having fun, you should worry. The main problem is that players work hard on characters they love, but because there isn't a challenge where they can fully test the potential of their characters in combination with their skill, they tend to get bored pretty quickly and look at combat tasks as mundane things to do. So let's look at an already existing endgame combat system, the Spiral Abyss. Currently, the Spiral Abyss holds 12 floors with the last 4 resetting every 2 weeks or so, and once you're done and claim the rewards, you have no other reason to do it. Now, what if we would increase the Spiral Abyss floor count? That would be one solution, but Spiral Abyss revolves around giving players rewards that are locked behind combat every 2 weeks. And we have to think of the players that do not enjoy combat but would still like to not miss out on rewards. Harder floors would mean more work for them or more time spent on min-maxing comps and characters that they might not enjoy in the first place. However, we can't forget about the hardcore players who still want hard content either. I can think of two options for this. One of them would be adding unlimited floors to the Abyss that don't have any additional rewards. The way you increase difficulty of these floors is not by adding more resistances. On the contrary, players like seeing big numbers. The bigger the number, the more fun they have trying to get the most damage per screenshot possible. If increasing the health pool won't be enough, then how about we rock our brains and actually come up with fun mechanics for every new floor. And instead of reusing bosses from Teapot that have long unskippable animations where they can't get damaged, why not come up with different bosses, or scrap the entire timer as a whole? In my opinion, a team centered around protecting a point from getting damaged would be much more fun. Increasing the Spiral Abyss floors is one thing, but in my opinion the best endgame combat they can come up with lies in an event that they have already shown us before. Something like the Hyakun Iki or Labyrinth Warriors is the perfect setting for more PvE endgame content, and it could match the Spiral Abyss in the sense that you can get rewards every 2 weeks for medium difficulty, and you could try harder difficulties but at the cost of no extra rewards or just a few more Mora or XP books. The point I'm trying to get across is that it really doesn't matter what they add into the game. As long as it's permanent, fun and challenging content, players would love participating in it, because as it stands, endgame is dry and sometimes even I feel little to no motivation in opening the game besides clearing out the most recent story. And when that happens, people tend to forget about the game and slowly quit. Another issue that I want to tackle while we are at this topic is the absolute depressing lack of co-op content. I really don't understand how this game can be so clunky and unfun to play with other people. Let's throw toxicity and people coming to your world to steal your resources from under the pretext of helping you aside. The fact that you can't even use all 4 of your characters because there's someone else in your world is simply weird to me. But other than some hide and seek or co-op events, there's absolutely nothing you can do with your friends in this game. It might as well not even be an online game at how single player it feels. I can't think of any uses to play with friends in Genshin Impact other than flex, steal, or profit off of each other through other means like Serenita Teapot. But how do we fix it? Make weekly dungeons where you need to co-op with other players a thing. Make chaotic events or dungeons where the volume of monsters is insane and you have to pair up with 3 other people in order to defend a spot. Another issue that I don't see addressed is the small volume of monsters presented in every single activity. I think I haven't even seen a maximum of 8 monsters presenting themselves at the same time in open world or dungeons. More monsters, more numbers. I actually stand by that. It really shouldn't be hard to come up with a good co-op system. I get that having 4 players each with 4 characters would be a bit too much, so let's limit that to 2 when it's in a party of 4. But co-op events or weekly tasks that should be done with other players need to be a thing. There's no better way to get someone to enjoy and play your game for a long time other than friends or social interactions keeping them in game. And last but not least, let's get into questing. I would like to mention that without a shadow of a doubt, I think that the Genshin Impact story is amazing in many ways. However, I do think that the pace and storytelling is disappointing to say the least. I feel like the cutscenes and heart-stopping moments really do bring out the best in this game. But there are 2 problems when you stop and think about it. A lot of problems or extra information is given through limited time events that disappear after a month, or side quests that a lot of people don't like doing because the way they present them is straight up boring.
But if they are boring, then why does it have important information in them?
Well, the way they go about it is boring. Most of the time, these pieces of information are given through NPCs that you have never heard of or you will never see again. This doesn't mean that they should bring the NPCs necessarily back, it just means that if you have a main cast that is super popular, why add faceless filler characters to relay important information? And the events should be replayable, at least when it comes to the story, or add a section of history in our menu where we can see past events or important moments that the traveler should have experienced but ours didn't because we didn't play during that time. One last thing I would like to see fixed is the community problem. This is the one that I feel the strongest towards. One thing that I really hate about gamers in this day and age is the lack of empathy and understanding towards other gamers who play the same game but like it for a different reason. Just because I like the combat and story but hate the overly predatory gacha system and the lack of endgame content doesn't mean that I want the game to die. I just want more systems in place that make me happy without affecting you negatively. But it seems that a lot of people, in the Genshin Impact community at least, would rather not have a lot of systems implemented just cause they don't care. It's the type of toxic trait where if it doesn't positively affect you, then you would rather it not exist. This was my personal opinion about how I would fix the game. But let me know in the comments, how would you fix Genshin Impact?